Good evening. Hello, everybody. Hello, come on in, everybody. Come get situated. Tonight we're making the necktie quilt block. It's going to be a 12-inch quilt block. It actually finishes at 12.5 by 12.5, which is perfect because the quilt blocks we've been making the last few lives, they're all 12-inch quilt blocks, so you could put them together as a sampler. But I am going to show you what this block would look like repeated as a quilt. If you just made this block over and over again, looks pretty spectacular. I'll show you that here in a second. Hello, everybody. Y'all, we are here in the evening. We're going to give this a try. How is everybody? Y'all, I have had such a busy day. It's been so busy today. Alexis, I see you're here. How is Hunter? Hello, everybody. Y'all come on in. I'm going to pull up the example of what this quilt block would look like repeated as a quilt. Okay. While I go over a couple of announcements of things coming up next week, because we have a pretty busy week next week too. All right, so grab a pen and a notepad if you want to take some notes. Next Thursday, we will be live, more than likely, if everything goes well. This evening, it'll be in the evening live next week too. I don't know what we're making yet. Stay tuned. Saturday, the following Saturday, what day is that? The 19th. Saturday the 19th. I didn't write the date on there. Patreon. If you're on Patreon, we're going to do our monthly Zoom and a mosaic project. I've already uploaded the pattern for that on Patreon. So print that out, get everything ready. We're going to be working together, making a mosaic project. Words are hard this evening. Y'all, Father's Day is coming up. It's on the 20th. It's on the 20th. That is what has inspired this quilt block, right? Creative Crew. Next Tuesday, we're going to do a sew-in starting at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time to 3 p.m. all day. We're going to hang out. I'll be working probably maybe doing the binding on the quilt you see behind me. Who knows? But 9 to 3 next Tuesday. That's the 15th. So that's next week in a real quick glance, right? Busy week coming up. Doesn't that look really good? I kind of really like this. For those of you who make memory quilts, you might want to, just print this PDF and keep it in your patterns, because this would lend perfectly for a man's quilt. We get commissioned to do t-shirt quilts and quilts made with mom's or grandma's clothing. We also get the men's clothing. This would be a fantastic pattern and relatively simple. You could even substitute, instead of using ties, you could use like button front shirts, t-shirts, all kinds of men's shirts instead of ties. I think that would look really awesome. All right, so pardon me, the chat topic this evening, would you rather be forced to dance every time you heard music or be forced to sing along to any song you heard? I cannot dance, so I'd rather have to sing. That's just me. No one wants to see me try to dance. I have absolutely zero rhythm and 2 left feet. Kathy said it's Tuesdays sew along on Zoom. How do I join? Kathy, Tuesday morning before 9 o'clock, probably around 8 a.m., I will put a link at the top of our page on Creative Crew. And if you don't have the Zoom app, you might want to download it before Tuesday. It's free. And once you have the app downloaded, all you'll have to do is click on the blue link that I pinned to the top of our page Tuesday morning. And that'll walk you right through. It'll join you in. You'll have to like join your microphone and turn on your camera. But if you don't know how, we'll walk you through it when you join in. Beverly said, I don't have to be forced to sing or dance. She sings and dances. So does Jeannie. She loves to sing and dance. Kathy says, I've inherited some ties from my grandpa. Would love to do something with them. Well, guess what? I'm using my grandfather's ties tonight. I sure am. I had a box of his ties, and I've been holding on to them for a few years now. And the ties I'm using this evening belonged to my grandfather. So they have a sentimental meaning to them. All right, y'all. So that's the would you rather question. We saw the example. Ooh, before we jump down and get started, I don't know if y'all have been following along in the Liberty Wall Quilt series. It's looking really fantastic. I don't know if any of y'all are making that quilt, but oh my goodness. It is so much fun. You can find that series here on my channel, and you can go check out that when we're done. All right, so I'm going to switch over. This pattern, it's free. It's down in the description box. It's a one-page PDF. It looks just like this. And it's going to tell you the things you need to gather, and we're going to go over that now. It does have an applique. Pardon me. Y'all, I have had y'all would not believe what I have done today. I've gotten so much done. And I'm just hoping that my voice will last through this live. There's an applique template right here, ready to trace. Okay. You can start your ties. I would recommend using a fusible adhesive. If you don't want to stitch down the applique shape of your tie, use a permanent fusible like Heat and Bond Ultra in the red package. I'm using the Heat and Bond Light in the purple package, so I will be stitching down my tie this evening with you. You could do this with freezer paper applique. You could, but the ties need a little support. Okay, and we're going to go over that here in a second. So I do recommend using a fusible for the applique if you're using the neckties. Okay. So you'll want to trace your applique template on some fusible. I've done that. You're going to need 4 or 5 neckties. I'll show you the block that I made. This one uses 5 ties, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But you could use 4. You're going to need a background of fabric. I've already cut mine for the block tonight. And this is going to measure 8.5 by 8.5 inches. All right. You'll need some interfacing for the back side of your tie or some really, really super duper strong starch. Okay. You could start your ties before you cut out your pieces, or you can use some fusible interfacing like this. This is Pellon P44F. Y'all, look how lightweight this is. This is super lightweight. You can find this at Joann's. It's one of the cheapest ones they have. It's 99 cents a yard. If you use a coupon, you save on that. But it does, even though it's really lightweight, it does add enough support to your ties so that you don't struggle while sewing the different silky materials, right? This one does already have the interfacing on the back side, but still look how light that is. It's very light and drapable, but it does add just enough support to the ties. So even though you can start your ties, I recommend using some kind of interfacing. You can even go thicker than this if you want to, but I tend to stick with the more lightweight interfacings. You're going to want to clean your ties if they need cleaning. A lot of the ties, you need to pay attention to what they're made from. If they're the silk, you might want to have them dry cleaned if they need it. Or a lot of the ties you can hand wash. You could put a little tub of cold water, a tablespoon of mild detergent in the water and swirl it around. Put your ties in, swirl them around, and let them sit for about 10 minutes. Then remove your ties, dump the water, fill it back up with cold water, rinse your ties. You might have to do that a couple times. And then once all the soap is gone, you're going to take your ties out of the water. Don't wring them like this to get the water out. Lay them flat and just towel blot them to get the majority of the water out. And then just let them sit on the towel until they're dry. You're just going to lay them flat, let them air dry. And so you might be able to clean your ties that way. And then this says all of that. And then we're going to be deconstructing a tie together so you can see how I take apart my ties. Let's bring this one back. Let's go over the pieces you need to cut from the ties before I move this out of the way. You're going to need two 2.5 by 8.5 inch pieces and two 2.5 by 12.5 inch pieces, right? So those are the pieces you're going to be cutting from your ties. Let me move that out of the way. Now all these ties are different. You might want to grab a seam ripper or some scissors, right? Because that's going to come in really handy. A lot of the times, the ties sort of have a label that's tacked on both sides, right there and there. With the seam ripper or some scissors, you can cut. Neither one of these have that tag, or else I'd show you. This one has a tag right there. But y'all know, a lot of the ties have that little tag that drapes right through there. Cut that off if it's there. And then with a seam ripper, you can start cutting these little stitches that are holding these two back pieces together, right? Now, I have shaky hands, and my seam ripper is super duper sharp. So I do not trust myself using this seam ripper that is going to only cut the stitches and not cut into my tie. So I'm just going to use some little snips, and we're going to start cutting these little tiny stitches. You can't even see them, I'm sure. Some ties have a lot of them, and some ties do not have hardly any of these little stitches, right? But you're just going to work your way right through there. See how it's starting to separate? And you're going to cut each one of these, and I'm going to try to go quickly like that. Like that. I'm just cutting those stitches right through there. You'll notice once it starts to come apart, whoop, I'm actually cutting this tie. You're going to see some interfacing in there. That's going to come out here in just a minute. Of course, I picked a tie that's got like 1,000 stitches in it. Of course I did. If you are wanting to make a block like this, or any quilt block using ties, but you don't have any, I recommend visiting your local thrift shops I always see tons and tons of neckties when I go. And you can actually be surprised how much fabric there actually is in this necktie once we open this up. Just going to take, here we go. It's going to take forever. Oh, is my sound messing up? Hello, hello, hello. Does my voice sound weird? No. Okay. You never know, because my microphone, when I use my microphone during the Zooms, it does sound weird, and I have to turn that off and use a different one. All right, I'm fine. I'm fine. Okay. You never know. This microphone has a mind of its own. Oh my glory. I would pick the one tie that's got a million stitches. Some of these other ties that I've already used did not have this many. I don't know that we're going to go all the way to the end, y'all. This tie is so long. Oh, here we go. Here we go. You can do it. You can do it. So while I'm cutting these stitches, let's talk about what I've done today, just to fill up some time. Let's see. I filmed block number 5 of the Liberty Wall sampler. I loaded a quilt and quilted Debbie's quilt. That turned out fantastic. Got that off the frame, ready for her to get it. Then I loaded Jan's quilt on the frame. I went to the store and got a batting. I did 2 orders of tags today and got those in the mail. What else? Oh, I got a third of my t-shirt quilt put together. It's been so busy today. All right. I think I've about run out of patience for this. There we go. I do think using a seam ripper would be so much faster. I just do not trust my sharp seam ripper that Sherry sent me. Not after having a really long day, that's for sure. Darlene said, busy bee. I know, Darlene. I've been up since 5 o'clock in the studio. All right, y'all. That's enough struggling. We're going to cut it off here because look how much more I have left to do. Ain't nobody got time for that. We're going to just pretend that I got to the end. I would not throw this away because if you had the patience to cut all those stitches and open this up, you're going to have about 2.5 inches, which would be just enough to get one of these pieces, right? I just don't have the patience for that right now. But we have opened up this part. And almost every single tie is going to have this interfacing, and that usually pulls right on out, right? I don't know of any good uses for this, so I usually toss it. Now we can open this up. Now, okay, so I want to show you. This is the tie, just like that from the front. But when we open it up, look how wide this gets. And this is a pretty narrow tie, right? That's a good little chunk of fabric right there. That's a good little chunk. And look how wide this tie is. So imagine if you were to cut this one open and open it up, it would be a gigantic amount of fabric, right? I'm going to warm up this iron because she's been sleeping since this afternoon. What I like to do is just open this up and give it a little press. But you also want to pay attention to what your tie is made out of, right? Because a lot of these are made with silk or polyesters, you know, pretty delicate fabrics, right? And so you might want to use a pressing cloth when you are pressing this so that you don't scorch or melt or burn whatever kind of fibers your tie is made out of. And then while my iron is warming up, all the ties have a turned edge at the bottom that give it that nice clean look at the bottom of the tie, right? Some of them are turned over and sewn to another piece of fabric right there, like a lining. This one is just the same fabric turned right side out. I just take my scissors. You can unpick that with your seam ripper, but I usually just cut this off again because who has time for that? But you want to remove that little lining right there, and you still have all of that tip of your tie left, right? I'll show you that again with this one right here, because I actually want to use this as my applique. So I wonder, I think this one will have less stitches we can unpick while my iron is heating up. Oh yeah, see how fast this one goes? Yes, I should have started with that one. See, here's a little bit of that interfacing. And this one has a silky lining on the inside. We're just going to cut that right out. Just cut it. Cut it. Cut it. Nita said, is it easier to do that or to use them the way with the fusible? Okay, I'm going to show you two different things, Miss Nita. I'm going to throw away that lining, right? We're going to open this tie up. And I'm going to cover it and I'm going to give it a press. The pieces that you're actually sewing your block with, right, that little border around the edges, I would use an interfacing on the back side of your tie. For the applique, I would use the fusible, like Heat and Bond, Wonder Under. Can y'all see that? I'm going to open this up and just cover it with a pressing cloth. And we're going to give this a press. You could just start your ties if you wanted to, but I don't have much luck trying to keep the pieces from going wonky, just starching them. So I do add a fusible interfacing on the back side. All right. So there is our tie fabric that I'm going to actually use as my applique this evening. See that? We're going to turn this back over. I'm going to fuse this right on the back. Again, I would cover it just to be safe. Just like that. That only takes a second. We're going to let that cool off so we can cut this shape out. While that's cooling off, I'm going to just make sure that this live chat is working. Give me just a second. All right. Once it's cooled off, we're going to go ahead and cut this shape out. And now is when you would cut it directly on the line that you traced. Again, if you don't want to sew down your applique, you might want to use one of the permanent fusibles, like the red package of Heat and Bond Ultra. And there is our tie shape, right? If you're at the point where you are fusing your interfacing before you cut out your pieces for the block, again, I would just press this nice and flat first, apply or put your interfacing down and cover that with a pressing cloth, and then press, and then you're ready to cut your pieces. Okay? So we have 2.5 by 8.5, 2.5 by 8.5, and those are going to go on the sides. And I like to just go ahead and join these pieces first. Then we're going to fuse on the tie. We're going to fuse on the tie before we sew the top and the bottom, right? Because we want the raw edge of this tie in that seam, okay? So let's go ahead. We're going to bring this to the sewing machine. We're going to sew 2 seams like this and this. And we're going to be using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Amanda said she would just forget doing the applique part and just take the bottom part of the tie. You could do that. Absolutely. And then each one of your ties would be the true shape of what it was, right? I do think, yeah, you should remove the bulk from behind here so it's not real bulky, right? But yeah, so each one of your ties would look a little bit different. Lisa said, how does Heat and Bond Ultra stand up in the washing? Lisa, okay, so I do think a long time ago, my kids were little. I made them a quilt with appliques with the red package of Heat and Bond Light because I didn't know how to sew down applique. That quilt lasted about 12 years. Granted, for a good portion of that 12 years, the quilt did not get used. It was just like looked at, and then the kids started using it. So the applique did start lifting, but I mean, it lasted a long time. If I were to use Heat and Bond Light, this is just me, okay? If I were to use the red package, the permanent Heat and Bond, it would probably be on an art quilt or a quilt that goes on the wall for decoration and might get washed 1 or 2 times, maybe. But see, my skill level has changed since then too, right? Now I actually enjoy sewing down the applique, so I've pretty much switched completely to the Heat and Bond Light, and I stitch down my applique. I do think at some point, if it's a quilt that gets used and washed, at some point I do think that there's a chance that the Ultra, the red package, the applique will start to lift. Alexa said, what do you use as a pressing cloth? I go to the thrift shop and I buy pillowcases. When I get home, I throw them through the wash a couple times, and then I separate the front from the back. And that's a perfect size pressing cloth for bigger chunks, like for t-shirt quilts where you're pressing long seams. Or you can cut it apart and make several pressing cloths from a pillowcase. I look for the cotton ones. Oh, Amanda says she likes the bulky effect. It gives it texture. Absolutely, Amanda. I say it's your quilt block. So you should do it however makes you the happiest, right? Okay, we're going to switch over to the sewing machine. We're going to do these first two seams. That should go pretty quickly. Remember, we're working with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, right? We're going to line up the raw edges. And we're sewing. There's the first one. Oh, these ties are directional, so let me make sure I'm sewing it on the right way. I have Christmas trees and bears. I want to make sure my Christmas trees are not upside down. Just going to match up these raw edges. Ooh, I hope I have enough bobbin thread. I usually check that before we start. I've been sewing. Didn't even check to see how much bobbin thread I had. Now we're going to go ahead and press these. You could press them open if you like. What am I going to do? Let's see. I'm going to press them towards the inside. If you want to press your seams open, by all means do that. Because we're working with the interfacing and we're still working with these ties, I am going to cover this with the pressing cloth because I don't want to take any chances and scorch that tie. So there's the first seam. We'll flip it around and do the second one. I want to thank my moderators tonight. Mimsy, I see that you made it. I thought you were going to be working. Thank you so much. And Miss Vicky, thank you for moderating. I added Vicky as a moderator this evening, just in case. And so thank you so much for keeping an eye on the chat. All right, so there's our first two pieces added. Now at this point, I like to add my applique because like I said before, I'm going to align this applique to the very top, that very raw edge, so that when we sew this piece, it catches the top edge of that applique, right? Ooh, Dari's going to a sale tomorrow where they advertise that they're going to have men's shirts and ties. Let's see. I'm going to go ahead and fold this in half. like that. I'm just going to finger press and give myself a crease. I think that's going to help me line up the placement of this tie a little bit. See that crease right there? The paper I just took off the back. Now we can put that right in the center, matching up the tip of the tie with that little crease. Again, I feel like these fabrics are so high maintenance. We're going to cover it and press that down. Cindy, yes, we're live in the evening this week. I think we're going to be doing it in the evening next week too. I wanted to get a feel for what the evening is like, because when we do Christmas in July, that's 12 days of lives every single day. And I know that I can't lose a couple hours during the day every single day, so I thought let's go live in the evening. So I wanted to give it a feel before we're approaching July. All right, that's going to have to cool off a second. Ooh, I really like this tie. I remember my grandfather wearing that tie. Isn't that awesome? That's going to cool off for just a second. Once you get to this stage, we're going to go ahead and sew the top and bottom pieces on, right? There and there. If you want to pin them or glue base them, if that would help you, then by all means, I would do that. I would take the extra time to pin these pieces on or to glue base them, if that helps you stay more accurate. But we're going to be sewing these two seams next. And then we'll stitch down the applique. Trinita, I saw you're moving. And just to let you know, I got my key from my P.O. box. Send me a message on Facebook. I have to go out in the car to get the address for it, but I got that. I haven't forgotten about you. I've just been so busy. Be safe moving, but that is exciting. Setting up in your new place. Alexis, we're starting Christmas in July. Hold on a second, I'll look at the date. Christmas in July. Christmas in July. Christmas in July. July the 20th. The 20th through the 31st. It's going to be a free pattern. I'm working on it, but you're going to have it in plenty of time. And we're going to do a block every evening together. All right, we're going to switch over. I get sidetracked so easy. Here we go. We're sewing these two seams. There's the first one. And we've got one more. I don't know why my seam was so far off there. I cut something wrong. I think the longest part of making these blocks will be cutting apart the ties, right? Adding an interfacing to them, and then cutting the pieces because that's kind of time consuming. But this block is super simple to actually sew it together, right? That's super simple. Ooh, I just did catch that seam right there. Yikes. Beverly got a new Applique quilt. Go this week. Ooh, Beverly. Oh, that's exciting. You will have to tell us about it when we meet. Ooh. That is so exciting. I'm so happy for you. I got seams going in every which way, y'all. Every which way. Jody said, I can't wait for Christmas in July. Yes, me too. Oh, I've picked out the cutest quilt blocks. It's going to be a fun quilt, y'all. I know everybody's busy, but you might want to tune in for that series because it's going to be a really cute quilt. Okie doke. Ooh, that's hot. So there's our block put together. And at this point, all we have left to do is to stitch down our applique. And there's so many ways you can do that, right? You could do a straight stitch. You could do a zigzag stitch, a satin stitch, any of the decorative stitches in your sewing machine. I'm going to pick a blanket stitch for mine. What did we do on this other one? We did, what is that stitch? It's a blanket stitch. But I used a thread that blends right in, so you don't even see it, right? But you can see it on the back side. There you go. See that? So we did a blanket stitch on this one. Before I do that, let me just check this bobbin thread. I feel like I'm going to run out. Oh, I almost did run out. I'm glad I checked. Let's just take the rest of this off and wind a bobbin while we chit chat. Y'all, I almost ran out. Let me just take this right off of there. While I'm doing that, I'll tell you about the surgery I had to perform on my sewing machine yesterday. I have a, in case this is your first time watching, I have a Juki HZL F600, right? I love this sewing machine. It has a little lever at the bottom where you can drop your feed dogs. I love that. Focus for a second, Lisa. So the other day, I was doing the free motion for one of the blocks of the Liberty Wall Sampler. And I lowered my feed dogs and I stitched that little block. And then I turned my sewing machine off because I didn't need it the rest of the day. Then yesterday, I went to do a satin stitch on another block. I did the satin stitch, and then I needed to sew a seam on something else, and I went to move that little lever that's on the bottom back over to raise the feed dogs, and it would not raise the feed dogs. I thought my machine was broken. And I sat there for about 30 minutes trying to get it to raise. No, it would not raise. I was like, oh, I have to sew this quilt together. I'm supposed to bind a quilt for Jan once I get it quilted. I have too much to do to be taking this machine into the shop, right? So, let me just get this thread in here real quick. So, of course, I start looking through manuals. There's nothing, you know, if your lever won't raise the feed dogs, what do? You can't find none of that information online or in the manual. Let me get this in there. Okay. So I tipped my machine like it was glass. So easy. I just tipped her on the side, and there's 2 screws at the bottom. So I undid the 2 screws, and the plate came right off, and wouldn't you know, it was like a little fuzz carpet that was blocking my lever from going all the way back up again. I removed the little fuzz carpet out of there, put the plate back on, my feed dogs raised. No trip to the sewing machine store to get fixed. I was so proud of myself. Let's see. Beverly. This is a tea-stained muslin. That's my background. Anne said, I love when I run out of bobbin thread at the last stitch. That has happened a few times recently. I almost ran out. I would have run out doing the... I'm glad I checked. Yes, Brenda. With your collection of ties, isn't this a great block for it? And said, hi, Lisa, you could do partial seams on your blocks and you won't have to join seams. True. Yes. Talking about partial seams, this quilt behind me has about 1 million of them. Of course, I would design it. It has about 15 partial seams in that quilt. Trinita said, can I use the inside of my tie batting for my applique? Not quite sure what you mean, Miss Trinita. Jim said, I lost a bobbin chicken last night. I almost lost tonight, Jim. I almost did. Sheila, I don't really know that I had any choice. I've got too many deadlines to be taking this machine to the shop. So it was like, let's just try and do this. And honestly, I said a prayer. I'm like, Lord, you know I'm too busy. Please help me fix this. And I did. I flipped it over, found the 2 screws, removed the little, it was like matted fuzz. I didn't even know that you could take that plate off and clean that. But yeah. Amanda said, what are partial seams? Amanda, when we're done, I have some videos on it. If you type in the search bar, Lisa Capen Quilts partial seams t-shirt quilts, those videos will pop up. It's kind of hard to see the blocks behind me. But not all the seams come together in the same places, which means you partially sew that seam and then it stays open until you join other pieces to it, right? And so you'll have to go and watch some of those videos. I'll show you how to do it. And the first couple times you do partial seams are a little tricky, but then once you do them a few times, you get the hang of it. Sandy, this is going to be a 12-inch block. It's actually 12.5 by 12.5. Finishes at 12 inches in your quilt. All right, so at this point, all we have left to do is stitch this tie down. I'm going to use a blanket stitch. Let me switch you over. I'm going to take this foot off so maybe you can see a little bit better. And I put some brown thread in the bobbin when I wound the new bobbin. I went ahead and put brown thread in there because I think that'll blend in with the tie. And I put a brown thread in the top. So you might not actually see the stitches I'm doing, but I want them to blend in to the tie. You, of course, could use a contrasting thread and make that a design part of your block if you wanted to. So a blanket stitch is number 6 on my machine. Let's see. I'm going to start off. I'm going to let you know these settings and we're going to test it out. This doesn't mean that your stitch is going to look like mine if you're using a different machine, but I always like to say what my settings are. 3.0 width and a 3.0 length. We're going to just test that out and see what it looks like. I'm also going to lower my top tension to a -2. Let's just see what this looks like. That's pretty long. I'm going to bump it down to a 2.6. All right, so 3.0 width, 2.6 length, and I don't know if you can see these last few stitches right there. That's what our blanket stitch is going to look like. I'm going to go ahead and stitch this tie down. Remember, the top raw edge of our tie is now in that seam, so we don't have to sew there. So we're going to start right here and work our way around. And because this is not a very dense stitch, we don't have to worry about putting a stabilizer underneath of our block. But it does help to lower your tension just a little bit. If you see any puckering up or anything wonky going on, try reducing your tension and see if that helps. Now, if your stitches are just really messy, you might need to tighten your tension. All of our machines are different. Okay. I'm going in right next to that applique, not on it. My machine takes a couple stitches and it locks it in place. Anytime you are moving this fabric, make sure your needle is down in the background with the blanket stitch. I'm going to take a stitch. Don't you like the bear in this tie? Aww. Someone must have given my grandfather this Christmas tie because I don't think that that's one that he would buy himself. He must have been given this one. Maybe not, but now we're right at the tip, at the very bottom of the tie. I'm hoping that open toe foot lets you see a little bit more of what's going on. I always slow down anytime we're doing curves. And we're almost done. My machine has a thread cutter and it's actually going to tie a knot at the back side. If yours doesn't, you'll want to pull this away and then pull the top thread tail to the back side. I think we showed that last week, and tie it off that way. That'll help keep all of your threads from unraveling as you use, as you use your quilt, right? And there we go. There is our finished tie necktie block. Cindy, I don't see why you could not cut these ties with your Scan and Cut. Most of the ties, I'd say yes. This tie here, this fabric here, can you see how textured that is? This is a heavy, thick tie. Even the single layer is kind of thick. Maybe if you use like the deep cutting blade, you might cut through this tie, but most of them are pretty thin, right? Even with the fusible on the back, I think your Scan and Cut would cut the ties. And Dari had a good point. If you were to scan this, put this on your mat and scan it in, you could create the template just from this PDF. Me too, Kim. The blanket stitch has been one of my favorite stitches for applique here lately. Look how fantastic this would look. I probably wouldn't put those two together. They're too much the same. There we go. Let's line them up like this. Isn't that awesome? Of course, my face is in the way. Yes, this would make a really awesome memory quilt. I would keep this PDF in your toolbox. Those who get asked to make memory quilts, a man's quilt, this would go by really quick. I tell you what would go by even faster is if you didn't use the ties and you just cut apart the shirts, right? The button front shirts. throw some interfacing on them, cut your pieces. That would be so much faster than cutting apart the ties. But yeah, if you have ties and you want to use them, aren't they fabulous? The designs and the ties. Yeah, Ella, we actually use ties. All these pieces. This is not a tie. That's just some tea-stained muslin. Everything else is ties. My grandfather's ties. Yep. You, of course, if you didn't, like, was it Kim that was saying she would just use the regular shape of the tie like that? So each one would be a little bit different. I've done cut off this piece, but we'll pretend like this is the tie like that. Right? So each one of the ties would look like the original tie. You could do that too. Let me tell you how I would quilt this block. And this is just me. There's probably a million different ways you could quilt this. But to keep it really simple and still have like a wow factor, I would stitch in the ditch this background, right? And then I would stitch right next to this applique, or you could even go on the inside just a little bit of the applique and stitch that shape, and then do some kind of background fill like a stippling. Wow, there's a million different filler quilting designs, but I would quilt this background area, and what it would do, right, is make the tie pop up a little bit. These borders would pop up a little bit with the background sunken down a little bit. I think that would look so good. Now you could turn this into a pillow, right? I know lots of you get people asking you to make projects on consignment. And, you know, a lot of times people will come in and say, I have 5 kids. I need 5 things made, you know, something made for all of them. This would make a great pillow and go together pretty quickly too. Or you could turn this into a wall quilt, just one block, right? How nice would that be? That would be so nice. Just a little wall quilt, just like that. Whoa, Sheila's dad just turned 91 on Monday. Happy birthday to your dad. 91. Whoa, Barbara has over 100 ties. You could make a bunch of these quilts. Or a bunch of pillows. Ella made a really good point with the ties. Dresden plates look amazing with the ties. They sure do. So this is the block, y'all. I kind of really love it. Unfortunately, I only have 2 more ties left, so I don't have any more of his ties that I could make more blocks with. That's it. That is it. I'm sitting here trying to decide which one of these is my favorite tie. And I'll tell you, this little leafy one is sticking out to me to be my favorite. So, in case you joined us after we got started, if you missed it, this is in the description box. It's a free pattern. You can download it. It just gives you the stuff you need and a simple little washing instructions for your ties if you need to wash them. What else? If you make this block, I would love to see it. You can share your blocks really easy over on the Creative Crew. And if you don't do Facebook, my Etsy link is in the description box, and you can send me pictures there. I would love to see your necktie blocks. Yes, Cindy, this was a tie. It sure was. All of these were ties. Pearl said that would look good on the wall in a man cave. Ooh, it would. Dari said she needs to get her butt in the sewing room and get busy. So I hope you've had a lot of fun. I hope that this evening time worked for you. Because I think we're going live in the evening next Thursday too. I have no idea what we're making yet. But as soon as I know, I'll put a thumbnail up here on my channel, usually a couple days ahead of time, so that you have time to grab everything. If you want to try to sew along with me live, then you can do that. And yay, you like the evening time. Yay. Sandy just came in. Yep, you'll have to come back on the replay. Good. It seems like the evening's working. I know my friends in the UK, it messes up with our time. I did see Hazel here. She told me she was going to be here. I don't know. I'm kind of torn about it. And one of the main reasons I'm torn about it, okay, so coming evening, and I just like being transparent. Coming on in the evening frees up a couple of hours of my work day. Because not only are we on for like an hour and a half live, there's all this work that has to be done to set it up, right? All the camera, everything has to be set up. That usually takes a good amount of time. So coming on in the evening frees up my work day, right? But I have another YouTuber that I like to watch, and she comes on Thursday evenings. So I'm missing her live. So I'm kind of torn about it. I am Eastern Standard Time. I'm in Virginia. Thank you, Barbara. Tammy's in her sewing room. Thank you, Miss Beverly. I can't wait to see your new toy or for you to tell us about it. Sandy said, I think you live near me. I live in Williamsburg, Virginia. Amy said, is it okay to wash the ties after we cut them apart? Well, I would recommend hand washing, and you're going to do that really gently. So I don't know that it makes a huge difference if you wash them before you cut them apart, like this, wash the tie like this, or after you've separated the seam and pulled out that interfacing. It actually might dry faster if you do that. I don't know that it would make that much of a difference. But if you have purchased ties at the thrift store, at the Goodwill, yard sales and stuff, and you don't know where those ties have been, I've seen men use ties as napkins before. I have. So you don't know where they've been. So if you're purchasing them out and about, you probably want to wash them one way or another, or just send them off to the dry cleaner. It can't be that expensive to have some ties cleaned. I don't know. But yeah, if you don't know where they've been, you might want to wash them. Sandy, you're in Hampton. Yes. Okay, so I lived in Hampton before we moved to this house. Yes. The jets would fly by, especially, I think it was Wednesdays or Thursdays. They had their flight training days. It was so hard to record videos on those days. But I love the jet noise, so. Ooh, Stephanie is going to be in Williamsburg at the end of the month. Hey. You'll be in my neck of the woods. Any nice quilt shops in that area? There is one in Newport News, which is about 25 minutes, 30 minutes, depending on traffic, away. And then that's the closest quilt shop that I know of. Wanda, did you have your surgery? Candy is going to try this block with some regular fabric. I think that's an awesome idea. I think that would still look really awesome. You made a t-shirt quilt with my directions. Yay! Yeah, Anne is in, Anne moved more into the country. So it's a lot more quiet where you are now, Anne. Okay, y'all. It's been awesome hanging out with y'all this evening. I hope you give this block a try. You know, so many different variations with this. Get creative with it. If you don't have the ties, use what you've got. And post pictures because I'd love to see it. I would love to see it. I'm going to, once this quilt behind me comes off the wall to get quilted, the 12-inch blocks we've been making will go back up on the wall. And I'm going to add one of these blocks to that set of blocks we've done together in the lives. Ella, you're having issues with Inkscape. What I would do is uninstall it from your computer altogether. Just uninstall it. Go back to Inkscape. If you are downloading a newer version of Inkscape, you might not want to do that. Go to an older version of Inkscape like 0.91 and re-download it and see if that fixes whatever issues are going on. Okay, y'all. Thanks for hanging out with me this evening. It's been a lot of fun. I really like this block. As I close tonight, I'm going to pull this up on the screen. That's the example, in case you missed that. Yeah, it was great hanging out with y'all tonight. Thanks for spending time with me. You could be doing a million other things, so I don't take that lightly and I don't take it for granted. Very grateful, and thanks again to my moderators. Thank you, Mimsy. Thank you, Vicky. Y'all are awesome. I don't have to worry about the nonsense going on. Y'all have a good night. Let's see. Tuesday, Creative Crew. We're doing the sew-in. I'm excited for it. Y'all have a great night, okay? I'm going to go say hi to my husband who's been gone all day long and just got home. Good night, everybody.